I don't know. Yes.
Hello. Can you hear me? Hey, Bob, raise it. Hey, Tim, can you hear me? Yeah. Hello, everybody. Ching, 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 ching. Yeah, Bob's but he's too short to see me.
Hello.
Hey, Bob, can you turn it up a little bit, Bob? Check.
Check, check, check.
Good evening, everybody. Hello. Oh, I like that. I can do it again. Hello. All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming to the Classic Car Club tonight and being part of our networking series. So, as you know, tonight we're talking about startup culture, which is something I seem to get involved in a lot, actually. So it means a lot to me. So I was really happy to have my friends as panelists tonight. So first of all, thank you for everybody for coming. Let me introduce you to who we're going to be speaking with tonight. So fellow member Hans here. Wait, actually, I made notes. Let me do this professionally. I wrote their bios for them. They don't know.
I think ChatGPT may have written these
No,
bios.
no,
Let's see.
not this part, not this part. So, Hans is a serial entrepreneur, investor. He's the founder of 10X Capital, as his vest says. 10X has multiple lines of business, including asset management, which is relevant to us, real estate assets, infrastructure, acquisitions, investment banking. Some of your more notable investments, or at least notable to me, I should say, 23andMe. I did that and I gave them a fake name because I didn't want my genetics running through the internet. DraftKings,
Your
Cadence.
secret is safe.
Yeah, right. The police are going to be knocking any day now. Next to Hans is also fellow member Douglas Sonders. You might have seen him around. He works in the car club a lot. Very entrepreneurial thing to do, by the way. So Douglas owns 8112 Studios. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
All right, sure. But I'm going to say maybe more relevant for this conversation is Expanded Existence. But 812 is a branded content production studio. He's worked with Apple, Amazon, who else? Volkswagen. I like the work you did for Volkswagen.
A lot of the big ones, yeah.
NASA. NASA's a big one.
Yeah, it's been around 20 years.
That's it. Expanded Existence brings hardware and software into the surgical theater to help hospitals and surgical teams set up, communicate, run more efficiently. Your system is quite new, but already used in 1,000 surgeries.
Yeah, our company, so I'm one of the 4 founders. We're on 3 continents and supported over 1,000 surgeries in the past year. So, and exponential this year. We're in a dozen hospital systems.
Impressive. Harrison Marcis over here. Harrison is an engineer, entrepreneur as well. He owns Marcis Industries, which makes lighting structures for, I can say, nautical use. Everything. Boats, mariners, all that. But more important to me and why I know Harrison is he's also the founder of Princeton Carbonworks. So you can see that beautiful bicycle on the bar that costs more than most of our cars. The wheels on it were designed by Princeton Carbonworks and by Harrison, as well as my bicycle right here. I am a customer and a fan, which is how we became friends to begin with. And then next to him is Chrissy Fitchl, who most importantly rode the bus with me to 8th grade. It was 8th grade? Yes. 8th grade. To Burner Junior High.
Yeah.
Since then is also a very successful entrepreneur. If your house smells nice, or if you go to a friend's house which smells nice, it's probably because of Apotheke, which Chrissy started 2011.
Yes, that's true.
So they make candles, home scents, things that make living a little bit more livable. And so thank you very much for being here, everybody.
Thank you.
Would you like to add to it, by the way? I gave it a...
No, I think it's so funny because I'm like, what, you can hear me, right? It's on?
Just a little closer.
Bob, could you make it a little louder?
I just think it's funny. I'm like, I just make candles.
Put a little closer to your face.
Like straight on.
I just think like it's funny because I'm like, yes, I make candles. Like these, you guys all sound so like super important. I'm like, I am saving every house.
Yeah, but we could all use candles. Hopefully none of us use what Douglas
but I am
makes.
like, as everyone's introducing themselves, I'm like laughing because I'm like, oh my god, I'm at the end and I'm gonna be like, I make candles. I'm gonna switch.
I don't make anything.
Okay.
I just let people drive stuff.
All right, good.
So anyway, entrepreneurialism. This topic is important to me because I like new things. I'm an entrepreneur myself, and I think one of the things that makes the Classic Car Club really fun is the network, and people who are members are like wildly aggressive, and they want to do interesting things. And I've noticed I think it's 20 years now, so it's maybe not a startup anymore. It feels like a startup to me. I've introduced so many members, or so many members have met each other here and have done like wildly interesting things together. And so I think that's why there's a lot of interest to it. So thank you again, and thank you everybody for being here. So I'll kick this one off. As an entrepreneur, I'm always really fascinated why people start a company. I think it's a very big jump to go from a secure job where there's an HR department and all the things you need to live, and then you decide to just blow that all up. And so for me personally, I've always had I've had problems with authority, and that doesn't mean I was a bad kid or anything. I don't mean that. I just like, in school, I always felt like I was institutionalized. At work, I always felt like I was institutionalized. I was just never made to listen to anybody. That was just a string in my life. So when I started working, I became a sales guy really quick, and I took every sales course I can, and then I started my own thing, and I started a brand marketing firm. As soon as I could be my own boss, I did it. But maybe that's not everybody's origin. Sometimes people just fall into something, or a tragedy happens and then an opportunity happens. But what was the start of it for you guys? And since you do candles, we'll start with you, because there you go.
Well, I think it's I agree with you where like I always felt stuck at my job, and I went to FIT and studied marketing, and then got a retail job because I didn't know what else to do. And I've tried a little bit of everything. I've sold cheese. I worked for the cheese shop. I like remember just being in a deli, being like, oh my God, this is forever. And to be really honest, like I had no passion for fragrance, no passion for candles or anything. And I was catering with my husband at the time in the Hamptons, and I just started to see a lot of these like luxury products and things that were moving. And I needed to get a hobby. My dad had a car accident, and he was paralyzed from the neck down. And I turned my phone off while we were at the hospital, and the woman I work for said, your lifestyle isn't gonna work anymore. I need someone who's here 24/7, and you turned your phone off. You're dismissed. And I was like, okay, I think this is a good thing. And you know what, like that's the only sour part of anything, but it was great. I think it was what I needed. So a friend of mine was like, you really just need therapy, you gotta work everything out with your dad and what's going on, or you got to get a hobby. I'm like, I don't even have insurance. I can't do anything. So I bought a soap making kit online, and it sat on the kitchen counter for like 2 months. And I was like, I can't even do a hobby. I can't even get my life together. I don't even know what I'm doing. I made the soap. My husband tried it, and he's like, this soap is really good. Like, I feel like it's different than like other soap. You should keep doing it. And like, that was okay. And I went and charged up a whole bunch of like soap making crap and things to do, and I just started to soap it. And I made soap. That's it.
It's a verb.
Soaped it. That's all I did. Everyone got soap for me, and I didn't even know I was starting a business. It really was just this like love for baking, which was something else I love to do. And making soap is really like soap. It's the same. It's the same process. You know what the texture. I made it in like shoe boxes. I would cut it. I'd give it to friends. And if you think about this, it was like 11 years ago, and like people in New York were starting to go to the Brooklyn Flea, and the Brooklyn Flea was all about makers and really having a story about what you were doing. And I just applied because I wasn't working, and nothing was really. I like the thought of going back to cooking for someone or doing this products. I was like, I can't do it. So I went to the Brooklyn Flea, I got a booth, and I sold out of soap, and I realized that what people loved when they came to the booth, this, selling soap, was the story of like, you made this soap, like what's in it? And I knew what was in it, and I told them that I made it. It was made in my kitchen. And I did that for about 2.5 years. And it was like the middle of August in Fort Greene, and like nobody's in. It's like so hot, nobody's there. I'm selling a $10 soap and buying like a $12 lemonade from my neighbor. And I was like, this is not gonna work. And at the time, my husband was still catering and cooking, and he was on a yacht with somebody, a famous singer. And in my head, he was like on a party boat, and he's like, I am making chicken fingers. I am not living the life right now. And I was like, this is just all really bad. Everything is bad. And these two women come and they want to pick up a candle. At this time I had started making candles. I probably shouldn't have been selling them. They were not great candles, but I was building a line. I just didn't know it. And this guy came by and he's like, we're opening up a concept store, and we just love the idea that you're a maker and that you're from Brooklyn and that you're doing this. And I was like, okay, great. Give me your card. I'll call you tomorrow. These ladies are going to buy some candles and soaps. Like, this is what I'm doing. Got home. It was like 11 years ago. I took my aviators off, and I had like a sunburn of like aviators, and I was just like, this is so bad. And I took this sweaty card out of my back pocket, and it was the CEO of West Elm. And I was like,
Nice.
But I was like, at the same time, I was like, I should have gave my elevator pitch right there at the flea.
The dismissiveness probably worked.
And I was just like, so I woke up the next morning, and he was just amazing. Wrote like a $40,000 order, and I was making everything in my like Bed-Stuy high-rise, first ever. It was like really the first luxury building where I would tell people I lived in Williamsburg, but it really was like Bed-Stuy. And the only person I really spoke to, because I did this at home, was like the ground UPS home delivery guy. So I remember him coming, and I'm like, you're never gonna believe it. And he was like, well, I'm like, we got an order. Because at this point, my husband's now like, is moving in with the family that, like in my head, we've broken up, And he's like, this is great, but you're really gonna need a factory, and I can't pick this up because this is probably gonna go like freight. He could have spoken another language to me when he said all that, and I just was like, I can help you bring down the order in the elevator. And he's like, no, you have to get like that wooden pallet. And the first thing when he said that I thought about was like, oh, people make beds out of that now, And so I was like, okay, all right. And that really was the beginning. And like fast forward, I really did get myself a little factory in a place across the street from my home, and I lived there for like I had the apartment, but I like lived there for like 5 years and grew my company until we were doing like $5 million in sales in like a 20 by 20 room off of like a like Hasidic Jewish printing notebook factory off of Bedford Avenue. And the guy that owned that, oh my gosh, Benny, was like my mentor because he gave me my first pallet. He let us use his forklift, all the things I didn't have that I did not know existed, did not know I needed. And I was like a joy to this family because I was exciting. Everything I was doing is exciting. Like he couldn't believe someone was buying soap for $5 a bar, and then reselling it for 10. And then he asked me where the store was, and then I helped him get Wi-Fi. Like it was just like, it was a really great relationship, but like that's how it started.
You worked from nothing, literally. That's amazing.
I really
did. It's
did.
Crazy.
I wanted to talk all about having mentors. That's good.
Thank you.
Your mentor was your landlord and the FedEx guy.
Yeah,
It's fucking
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I still talk to Bernie, the son, and I like taking my kids there, and like I show them I'm like, this is where Apotheke started, and they're just like, it's great. I'm like, it's a factory that has no windows because they store paper, and so paper and light are not good. So like my kids are like, that's the scariest factory you've ever owned, And it's like, it's really like, it's just organic how it happened. I didn't know I was doing it.
Those are the best entrepreneurial stories.
Yeah, I probably won't be able to do it like that ever again.
Confluence of situations. You only
Yeah.
have to do it once. Good for you.
I hope I only have to. No, yeah, only once. I love it.
Harrison, how did you start your factory and warehouse?
It all stemmed just from, it was a choice. You know, like, I can keep it kind of short, but like I made a choice early on that I studied engineering and then I got a business degree, and I saw what a lot of my peers were doing. Yeah. And I made a choice, and what
were you doing at that point?
Nothing.
Were you doing something regular or
I
nothing?
graduated college. I had a job. I hated it.
Yeah.
I rowed in college, and that sort of was the beginning of Princeton Carbonworks, the wheel company. We were all rowers, and rowing is regimented. You know, you've got 8 guys in a boat. You got to show up at the boathouse every morning at 5 in the morning. So I understood structure, which a lot of people say you got to go get a real job first before you start a business, because you need that structure. You need to know how processes work and businesses actually operate. And I didn't understand that. And it was the same thing with, how do you put something in a padded envelope, and how do you print a UPS label, and who actually picks it up? Like, where do I bring this UPS padded envelope? And I was completely fine with learning it myself. I made the choice that I just wanted to do something on my own. I was very creative as a child, and through college I wanted to make things. I went to school in Boston. I couldn't afford my apartment while also trying to run my own business. I was making prototypes in my room, and it just wasn't working. So I moved home, and my parents thought I was nuts. You know, my girlfriend at the time broke up with me. Like, I was like kind of like starting fresh. I was like, well, I'm back with my parents now. I'm 26, living at home. But I'm a firm believer in going through the process, participating in a little bit of sacrifice in order to get like a bigger goal, sort of giving up the momentary. All my friends, you know, we were in our mid-20s, and everyone's out partying and going on vacations, and I didn't have the money to do that. I loaded up stuff in the back of my car, and I drove around trying to sell it. At the time, I had come from a lighting company. I was an engineer. I did lighting design. So I started with lighting, and that company still exists. And I would throw stuff in the back of my car, drive around, see what I could sell. If I made $500, I was like, sweet, I can live another month. We were renting a 1,000 square foot industrial bay, and it cost $780 a month. And like, my number one goal was like, make rent. And I did that for 2 years, and then we moved into a 5,000 square foot space. Then we moved into a 8,000 square foot space, and now we bought a big building. And you know, that was always my vision of having enough infrastructure to do what I wanted when I wanted to do it, and not have this sort of like risk of financial risk and a landlord that kicks me out. So I wanted to be able to do it on my own. And to a greater extent, we've pretty much done that. And we've started multiple companies out of this same idea of like, just do it. Make the choice, try it, do it.
And what year did you start Princeton Carbonworks?
So Princeton Carbonworks sort of conceptually started in 2012.
Yeah.
And then as a business, we had prototypes by 2015, but it was still just a bunch of guys once a month getting on the phone being like, hey, what are we doing with this wheel? Is it good? Is it bad? So by 2017, we had raised a tiny bit of capital, and we started. And then I actually didn't come on as a operator full time until 2019. So it was kind of like just a slow gestation. It wasn't the kind of thing where like we raised a bunch of money and like hit the ground running. No, it was like lots of missteps in order to spiral towards what worked.
You could say that's slow. So I knew about Princeton Carbonworks really early on. I knew your business partner before I knew you. So I actually rode one of those prototype wheels. I happen to have a very good friend who's like the #1 bike seller in America, and I was like, oh man, Albert. I was like, I got these wheels. You gotta sell these wheels at the shop. They're super cool. I love them. And he was like, I got 9 kinds of wheels already. I don't need another kind. I got a phone call from Albert maybe like a year ago or something, and he said, by the way, I sell Princeton Carbonworks wheels, so you know. He's like, they do come shipped on Pinarellos now. So very long journey. And your wheels hold the world speed record, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, we have multiple world records, world hour record, individual pursuit world record, multiple world championships on road, time trial, track. We have a secondary company that we started just last year to do mountain bike wheels. So it's blossomed, but it was a long, painful road to get there.
So your, and this is a question for everybody really, but your threshold for failure, acceptance of failure, I should say, seems pretty high.
Always, yeah. I mean, everything's gonna fail. Like I actually enter, and this is not being like not optimistic. I'm not a pessimist, but I'm very real in that I realize like most of the times things are gonna get cocked up pretty bad, and you got to be able to just deal with it and keep moving forward, like striding forward. You got to be like a duck, water off the back, and just like things are gonna get screwed up. You got to just keep moving forward. That's the most important thing. But huge threshold for failure.
Douglas, did you have a moment while on a surgical table and saying, I wish these people had it together a little bit more than they do?
No. I mean, I'm thankful. I also had to learn what a palate is. So amazing. But honestly, both of you, really amazing story. I would say my journey is super wild. So 20 years ago, I was decided I was going to be a decent portrait photographer. So senior year of college, I convinced the #1 rock band at the time to take me on tour with them. I sold my '66 Mustang.
Who's that?
It was this band, Three Doors Down. I ended up shooting a couple of their album covers, #1 on Billboard charts. Ended up meeting the president of Universal, Monty Littman. Ended up becoming one of the first photographers for iTunes. I started shooting for Rolling Stone and Time Magazine and National Geographic and 40 or 50 covers and that sort of thing. But and then YouTube started, and I went to my childhood best friend, and we saw the future in video. There were clients that wanted video on the back end of a photo, and then we were at Goodwood, and that started kind of growing, long story short, and then we were at Goodwood Festival of Speed, saw one of the first VR activations I've ever experienced on an Oculus Beta. Oculus, whatever the Meta Beta, whatever the first, Oculus Quest 1, and it was a Mercedes experience.
Hans knows which is first, I think.
And it was really shitty, actually, but my business partner, Nick, who's my childhood best friend from when I was 6, he lives 12 floors above me over at the Silver Towers here. We said we could do better, so I figured out how to 3D print and develop 3D cameras. Cold sold to our friends at Nat Geo, pioneered their VR platform at National Geographic, won some awards, and then from there pioneered VR at AOL, created a whole test platform. And while we were on a VR shoot, Jeep was there. It was Jeep Safari. I walked up to the director of Jeep Brands and I said, you guys could really move into the future with your marketing, and I beat out Accenture and Marcis, some of the biggest interactive companies in the world, to cold sold and develop a prototype augmented reality car configuration platform with the JLG Wrangler. Those are my little company with 5 people versus $100 million companies. And then we debuted that CES, won a bunch of awards for that. I decided I was going to learn to code. So I learned Swift and Unity and C# really poorly so I could prototype what we wanted to do. We kept on trying to sell concepts to brands, VR and AR, and they're always looking for whatever the hot term for that, and it was really frustrating to try and sell individual things when we saw it as the future. So my business partner and I saw augmented reality as the future, and the only way we're going to really make a good living and pioneer that is develop our own IP. So we went to one of our good friends who was a neurosurgeon. We said, medicine, that's the future. We could help doctors. I'm not a doctor, by the way. I'm a rock and roll photographer. I have tattoos. I ride motorcycles. I'm definitely not involved, not the kind of person you want to see in your operating room. But I knew enough about coding and developing award-winning apps, so we went to our neurosurgeon buddy, former Navy SEAL, race car driver, pilot, guy liked really thinking big. So we started coming up 4 years. We bootstrapped some money. 4 years of coming up with some really bad ideas, and then after that, came up with a really good one, and filed 5 or 6 or 7 patents. I'm losing track. Learned about TAMs, learned about venture capital, learned about fundraising. Like I said, we've supported over 1,000 surgeries in the past year, and it's going to be exponential this year. We're in some of the biggest hospital systems, and that's coming from being a rock and roll photographer and just kind of figuring it out. One thing you always learn, I guess, about me, if you get to know me, is I'm very passionate about pursuing whatever I want to know about, even if that means just doing it. Giving up sleep, figuring it out, just learning it, and I have really amazing partners to make it happen. So
high risk factor as well for you.
What's that?
Like you have a high risk personality factor as well.
Fuck it. Just go. There's no failure. I mean, you just do it. I've never had an employer my entire adult life, and I'm not a trust fund kid.
Excellent. Nice. Sir?
Let's hear it for the entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Those are good stories. I don't think I've done an honest day's work since, I was mowing lawns and shoveling snow as a kid, but those were the first businesses. Like you, Douglas, I haven't had a job since I've been an adult. I was an intern at Goldman Sachs and decided not to do that, decided to go out and raise some venture capital for a fintech business. It wasn't called that back then, but we kind of did a cryptographic digital currency of sorts. No Bitcoin or anything like that. 1999, that didn't exist, but we wound up selling it. And went on to invest in a lot of businesses, some of which went public, some of which got sold, including one in your space, ePhotos, which got sold to Getty Images. One which went public NASDAQ called Oculogics Corporation in the med tech space. And we kept getting lucky, I'd say. Eventually we realized that it was really luck, and we've built a real business. 10X now is the most active venture capital firm in the United States, according to PitchBook at least. That doesn't mean we put out the most money, but we do write the most checks, and we try and write them behind what we call top decile and top quartile venture capitalists who do see all the best deals. And so, we kind of took our hubris out of it, while we love, building businesses that are near and dear to us, and we've done that several times. As Mike mentioned, I'm, a serial entrepreneur, and so before the venture capital career, built and sold several businesses. What we realized was that what was near and dear to us, for example, in fintech or payments or mortgages or a lot of the spaces that we were successful, wasn't necessarily the place that we were going to build the most wealth or be the best VCs. And so we took that hubris out. We looked at the data and we realized that if we just bet behind the winners, we'd wind up making a lot more money. And so we have. And that's really the approach we've taken across the board, and that's actually allowed us to really foster a lot more entrepreneurship. It's allowed us to be much more supportive of our entrepreneurs, and when you have 400 or 500 portfolio companies the way we have, over the last, couple of decades, you get spread a little thin, so we do want to make sure that we have the ability to really invest in, in the folks that we're working with. But for me, I think, being around so much fresh thought, so many exciting people, that's the reason that we do it. Those new thoughts keep us young, and they really, allow us to advance the ball. So
Great.
That's me.
Thank you. Harrison, you talked about how it's difficult, how things go wrong all the time. So when I started the Classic Car Club with my business partners, and no one had done it before, it's not high tech. Again, I'm letting people drive cool cars. It's not the craziest thing, but I learned that after I paid for the space of doing everything, and vicarious liability is a thing, which is boring, whatever. But this was a huge problem. I could not now run our business. I couldn't put people in cars if they had an accident. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't get insured. So I had to figure that out, or we had to figure that out. I can't take credit for it, but we basically had to have New York State case law rewritten, which we did, and then we were able to do it. Collectively, what challenges did you guys have and women have that came up that was completely unexpected, and how did you fix it? How did it not railroad you? I assume it made you stronger. Do you have any good stories for us to share?
Do you want me to go?
Yeah, whoever could go. You
Okay.
could go. You revel in the pain, I think. So you're a cyclist. That's what you suffer.
Endurance
You suffer by
athletes
nature.
they love this concept of pain and sacrifice. And it's this whole thing.
You were telling this great story about where you came on as CEO. I don't know if you want to tell that story.
Oh, that one?
Yeah.
Well,
Is that a good one?
What's your first one though? What was the one that almost kept you in your mom's basement?
for wheels, for lights, for everything. I mean, everything's a struggle
Yeah,
for our business. For me, it's always been money. I never wanted to raise money at a large level because I saw so many of my buddies from college raise millions of dollars, and they'd have these beautiful offices and headcount, and people would do these jobs. And I went into one of my buddies' companies once, and everyone was online looking at what type of candle to buy for the office, what scent they should get. And I said, are you serious? I said, how is nobody, crack some skulls and get to work? You guys need
Chrissy
to
has
start
all that VC money
making
now.
some money.
That's how she got it.
So I always we never even had real chairs. Richard, one of our employees, Richard, he's our director of operations, joined me here. And Richard will attest that we don't get good chairs because that's a waste. We don't spend money on anything. And
I don't have a desk.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
It's a Bezos philosophy right
we
there.
never had money. And like, if you run a business that's growing and you don't have some form of backing, like, you're never gonna have money. At least that's me. Like, we've never had disposable income because there's always something else we want to do. We always want to grow. So you're always a little bit on the back foot. That's my experience. Other guys do it differently. I've done it this way. We've had serious, like, existential challenges to the business over the years. So financial is one thing. I mean, you run out of money, you get a line of credit, you talk a bank into giving you a line of credit, and you can kind of figure that out. Mm-hmm. But there are larger problems that are existential. We got sued for patent infringement.
Yeah.
And that was a big deal for us. And in the industry, it was a big deal too, because everyone was like, whoa, this startup, these nobodies got sued by this huge billion-dollar corporation, sued us over a patent. And it's really scary when you get a cease and desist letter in your mailbox and you're like 28 years old and you're like, what? I didn't have a lawyer. I couldn't afford a lawyer. Like, we didn't pay for anything. We didn't have anyone doing it. Like, the guy that set up our corporate docs was my co-founder's father-in-law. He did it all for free. And that's why the business is incorporated in Florida, because he was like semi-retired living in Fort Lauderdale. And we're a Florida corporation as a result of that.
Tax benefit to it on the side?
No, we get no benefit. But we got sued. And I didn't know how to handle it. And I had to put forward this sort of like strong face of like, yeah, we're going to get through this. We'll figure it out. But like, the only way out is through. So that was a big deal. I don't want to go too deep into that, but it was a
That's profound.
huge thing.
Dealing with problems, that's the biggest thing, because I find with a lot of my friends who are entrepreneurs or they want to be entrepreneurs, they either lack the ability to take the first step, or they take the first step and it gets a little bit hard and it ends real quick. Like that, like people never, most entrepreneurs don't get past it all. And so maybe it's a big problem that you have, but I think the other thing is how do you deal with a crisis, a situation, a challenge? Like what's the mindset for it? And Chrissy, you do a lot of this on your own. I know that your husband is your employee, as we've discussed.
Well, I mean,
what's
he's
the
my
way?
employee and my business partner. Sorry, what's the question?
Just how do you handle the confrontations when they come or the problems when they come? Because as a business owner, they come every single day.
Oh, yeah.
So what's your methodology is the question.
Oh, I mean, I'm horrible at it. I think my biggest challenge is like the people in the process. Like, I can have like a horrible day. Let's just say like something like we get a candle that exploded. It's usually candle care. People just don't burn candles right. You know, 5 hours is the max, and then it's a heat bowl. And I can see an email of like the explosion of a candle. There's no wax in it. And I'm like, okay, write to her gently that it's candle care. There's no wax. She obviously burnt it to the end. You're supposed to leave like a half an inch of wax in every candle. That's like the cushion. And I can deal with all that. But then I get like, I know, people don't know how important it is. But I can say that like what triggers me sometimes is like the employees. I love them, but like I do really try to do my best. And I think sometimes they don't know I'm doing my best as a small business where it's like, I get nervous. I really am more nervous about getting like a lawsuit from an employee. I think that's my biggest like worry in life, and I do everything I can with HR and having everything written out, but you still just get nervous, and I get really nervous because I'm always just like, when we do like an exit interview with someone, I'm like, is there anything you want to tell me that I did wrong? Is there anything I can do better? And like, for the most part, everything's been great. My fear has never happened. I've never been sued by like an employee, but like, I'm so worried about that, and I'm so worried about it becoming like a scandal of like, like my boss talked to me about her doctor's appointment or like something that like, I don't know, like where it's like, I'm like, I thought we were friends, and so I get like really nervous about that stuff. And I think my only other real struggle is it's working capital. Like I always feel the same thing. Like I I pretend I'm poor. I mean, I probably really am. But like, you know, like I have a mortgage. I'll complain about anything. Like I complain because I'm talking about my husband. Like he'll go to me like, I think we need another wax melter, and I'm like, God damn it, Sebastian, can't you figure out how to do 2 shifts and use 1 melter? And then he'll be like, look at me and he'll be like, why do you have all little dots on your face? And I'm like, I got medical Botox. You know, meanwhile, I'm like, don't want to spend any money on the business, but I'm like, I deserve this. But like, I really do like, I pretend like there's no money in the bank. Usually there's just a little bit, and it's a hustle. Like payroll every 2 weeks is like a sleepless night, you know, just being like, oh, you know. But I think those are the 2 things, like just being sued by an employee because I would take it very personal, and secondly, just working capital is like so difficult. I think that's like, if I didn't have to worry about that, I would be like such a better person, you know, because I wouldn't be like anxiety of like, you know, like, okay, this sounds so great, and then in my head I'm like, that sounds great. We should open up 10 retail stores, and then there's like that like little like Debbie Downer on my shoulder, and she's like, how are you going to pay for it? You know, and that's just like how I feel like I live. There's like always that.
It's just the tension that keeps it straight, though, so it keeps it together.
Yeah. So,
I don't have that. If I was running this business by myself, I would have destroyed it a long time ago because I would have done all those things poorly. Yeah.
Right. So
I feel that. I mean, what you guys said, just running, we run lean. As lean as possible. We all bootstrapped. That's how we got going. We did take angel capital, but we're all like, our burn rate's super low compared to what we compete against. And we're always like, you know, everything we do, my partners are like, if we fuck up one thing, that's $100 million in our eventual valuation. I mean, we're like terrified of our futures, but you know, a really big startup concern and problem is talent. So how do you motivate your team? Our company is smaller as well, like you guys. How do you motivate a team to want to work 7 days a week, be responsive to put augmented reality headsets on surgical teams around the world and believe in it and be willing to commit whatever time it takes?
So how do you do it?
You got to be a great boss.
Dude, I mean, my CEO is a Navy SEAL, so I mean that, you know, there's a very intense group meetings, but no, I mean, us founders, we're all pretty, like, we thankfully all have like good understanding families, but the truth is, like, our biggest challenge really, like, we have good coders, it took us a long time, good dev team, but our sales teams and support staff, it's a real challenge really to ultimately find the talent that's willing to go like beyond. And really, you were bragging about some members of your team that you're proud of. Before, you're saying that that's so important, and I agree. We have members of our team. I couldn't do it. You know, I'm willing to work unpaid 7 days a week, on call, whatever it takes. Same with my partners, but is our employees. Really, truly, are we willing to fly? I may have to fly to the UK tomorrow to go respond to a hospital system. It's just, that's honestly the biggest thing. And how do we overcome that? That's like the ultimate question of every startup, let alone every tech startup in the world. And I think we're sort of feeling it out. And I think just finding that little talent, those people that we love, we like, hold them and baby them and make sure they're taken care of, because we've had to drop people that unfortunately just didn't have the heart. And unfortunately, it's not a lovely, all flowers and gumdrops 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, right? You got to make it happen.
It's really refreshing because you all are in really physical businesses by comparison to so many startups in the technology space. I mean, they're a lot of folks are very engineering driven, software development driven, and right now one of the big debates is people working from home. Right, a lot of these positions desire it. How do you all deal with that? Given the incredible physicality of these businesses, you need people making things, right?
I live on airplanes, pretty much, yeah, sadly.
It's so, to kind of extol on that a bit, what I found is important as a team, and this was true, I learned this when I was 15, playing high school sports, through college, through all these different businesses, is creating a sense of purpose for the team is incredibly important, because you need to galvanize everybody around one direction, right? There's a lot of guys that have said you sort of like this, the sum effectiveness of your team is all the vectors added up. But if the vectors are pointing in different directions, if you have one arrow that's pointing really strong this way, but then you have another guy that's kind of pointing this way, another guy that's pointing this way, and then they kind of cancel out. Yeah. So you need to get everybody's vectors aligned in the same direction, and that's creating sort of this commonality of purpose. Yeah. And that, for me, has been sort of the underlying thing that has allowed us to do exceptional work with very small budget, very small team. We have very high-performing individuals because everyone has this common purpose of what we are trying to do.
Is that purpose framed within athleticism? So you have a bunch of world records?
Well,
is that a...
Here's actually, this is interesting for the wheel business. What's most interesting about it is we have excelled as a team because there is a competitiveness about it, right? So my lighting business, it's a great business, but it doesn't get me super excited because I can't win, right? There's no winning in lighting.
Can you rally people around a sales goal?
Yeah, of course. You can rally people around anything if you make it important and make it your mantra. There's crazy tech CEOs that they get people chanting and they take wheatgrass shots and like, we're gonna go close the most whatever subprime whatever. Like, people will rally around anything, especially if they're getting paid.
I take that personally.
What portfolio companies? Because you deal with a lot of companies, what are the from that perspective of having like a unified vision and a goal in a young company and getting everybody in line? Do you have any really standout examples of unique goals that meant something to you, maybe perhaps, or stood out to you?
I think we had I won't name the company because they're a fairly household name now, but. We had some kids that had come right out of Harvard, and they came into the office, or friends of one of our general partners, and they, they're green is probably the right way to put it, and they had put in probably 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for about 3 months trying to build their MVP, and we realized that these kids were struggling. They hadn't slept. They were kind of wild-eyed, and what we did, and I continue to think this is like one of the the big things that we learned over the years is we just had one of our most senior engineers who was kind of a CTO level guy step in and just help them, just step in and get them shepherded through the next call it 2 months of development and get them to that MVP, put them in front of everyone that could potentially invest, and it wound up becoming a very good outcome. And we kept doing things like that. The biggest advantage for us, 10X Capital prides ourselves on being Wall Street meets Silicon Valley, and the reason for that is all the businesses we started, we went to guys like Goldman or Blackstone or whomever it was, and we'd put in a couple of bucks, and then they'd put in a couple of $100 million or a couple of $1 billion in what we call non-dilutive financing, essentially debt, right, or offtake or whatever it was, and that created this huge force multiplier effect. And that was the hack. Instead of contributing that one engineer that could be helpful and get a product over the line, here we could take a business and literally 10x it. So we had a guy who may be here tonight. No, I don't see him. So we had the CEO of a company that had gone out and raised a couple $100 million when that was a lot of money for a real estate crowdfunding startup, and he sold all the shares and was sitting, went on a hike in the Himalayas for a couple of years, and then, wound up in our backyard in Soho, and he said, I want to do what you guys do. And I said, you don't want to be a VC. That's crazy. And he said, no, I want to not give up my whole company to VCs. And, I want you guys to do for me what you do for your own companies. I want you to bring me all that capital. And so we did. And, we brought this, we call it pre-Series A, but really, let's be honest, a seed stage company, about $1 billion in non-dilutive financing. And and the rationale was he came to me that after the first year, and he had raised money from guys like Steve Cohen and Chamath and us, and he came back and he was like, look, I did $30 million of, he was doing rental loans, right? I'm sorry, not rental loans, fix and flip loans, renovations of homes, and he'd done $30 million, and I said, that's great. I looked at his loan tape, and he had actually bought 10% participations in $300 million of other people's loans. And I said, why didn't you buy the whole thing? He said, well, how would we do that? I said, you worked at Bear Stearns. You guys kind of invented how to do this, right? So, he didn't know, and that's when the light bulb went off. I was like, oh, okay, I get it. That's what you mean. And so, when we brought him that capital, we ran a road show. We brought in that money. he went from doing $30 million a year to he did $3 billion, in the next couple of years. And that was the actual lift, right? Like, we could provide some advice on running a business. We could even provide a body to help, build the business, but there was nothing compared to scaling the business. That's really where we saw, the lift, right?
So this is the conversation for business owners. So we all kind of bootstrapped in a way. You had some angel investment. You had a landlord who was helpful in giving you pallets and stuff. Would you have raised money differently? Again, my friends who are entrepreneurs, a lot of times they won't make that next step because they don't want to give up. They don't want to give up their equity. I worked so hard on this. This is mine, and someone's going to come give me money. And they're going to own half of it. I'm going to own nothing of it. I've always been of the mindset I'd like to own a really small bit of something huge rather than a whole lot of something less valuable. That said, capital is always a problem for me, I think, in every other business and entrepreneur. In your collective experience now, hindsight, would you have raised money differently if you could? And are you in the process, or will you soon be raising money, and how will you do it differently from what you learned?
Well, yeah, because it's like very...
Hans, remember, he did say, by the way, he brought a money cannon. So
well,
it's going to make it rain later.
It's very much on point to where our company is right now, actually, because thankfully we got our burn under control. Our product is made. We have contracts out there, but we were talking about at the dinner table was scaling, and I'm sure you feel, Chrissy, the same thing, right? It's easy to sign the first 2 customers, but our plan with our TAM and our valuation is we plan on being in thousands of hospitals and hundreds of thousands of doctors and surgical staff. And so, no, I mean, I would love a paycheck right now. Thankfully, I have my other company, which, pays for my Classic Car Club membership, but...
Prices are going up.
No, but we bootstrapped. It got us to a good place. It didn't cost a fortune. It was, more for some, but not millions of dollars or anything like that. Angel round, I didn't have to give up a lot of us partners. We were equal. There were safe rounds. We only had to give up, I think, like 10, 12% overall of the company, and that was about $3 million. And our burn rate's so low that that's enough runway. And now we're meeting with VC Series A. And, that's its own discussion, as I'm sure, But, they're out there to get their own. I mean, not everybody is a good guy like you. They're in there to make money. And there's these horror stories where they'll drag you out until you're desperate for water in the desert to give you that money, and they'll take an extra percentage. So, but thankfully, everything, I think I'm happy with what we did, is a long story short. Because we developed the product. Like I said, I would love a paycheck right now as a C-suite, but it is what it is. It's fine. We're surviving. And ultimately, it's strategizing us better for Series A. And we couldn't scale, honestly, without Series A. I mean, we're trying to go big, global scale. We unfortunately have to. I would love for us to just be like, oh, we're going to sell some contracts, but to do what we need to do, it just is what it is. But yeah, strategy of money and how you accept capital is a huge aspect of how our valuation and next stage is going to be.
I'm taking a guess, but I'd imagine Chrissy has a healthy burn rate because you're a consumer brand. And I think that whenever you have to present yourself to the mass public, man, that's expensive. And by the way, she has a beautiful retail store in Red Hook, also one in Rockefeller Center.
I do. Well, Rockefeller closed because that's a pop-up. So that was we did that.
How many stores are you in now? 613, I think, was my count. It's probably more than that.
Yeah. So we're in all the major department stores, Crate and Barrel, West Elm, Nordstrom, like all the big stores, all the majors. And then we have about 600, I think it's like 600, even maybe a little more, like between 600 and 700 active mom and pop shops, like individually owned stores, which I think is really important because that's where a lot of us shop too. So like I just love when I have a friend that's anywhere, like in Kansas, and it's like, I'm in this really cute shop, and it's a picture of our candle. So it's funny, I'm gonna be honest, like a lot of like what you guys are talking about the raising money and stuff like that, I'm like, I have no idea what that is. I'm like, I do know I need a couple million to keep doing what I'm doing. But I do have an investor early in. Like I was about 5 years in business. I had just had my second kid, and it was just getting rough. Like it was just like, I'm like, how am I gonna do it? Like, kind of like the same place I am now, but like in a very like deer with like kind of like this light right now, like a deer with headlights. Like what do I need it for, you know? So, but now I know what I need working capital for, why I want this like big investment in, because like if I'm thinking about doing this much, I need this much, and I now know it, and I now know how to like approach it to like the next investor. So we do have investors. It was like, I really feel like I have nothing horrible to say. Like, I love my investors. I took them in at the right time. They're the coolest guys. I feel like they're my family. They know I don't really know numbers as well as I want. So like one steps in as like a part-time like CFO and like breaks it down for me like every other week. And I just get to do what I know. I know fragrance. I know beautiful things. I know what sells. I'm a great salesperson. I love going to the shows. I love talking. I just like what I do, and they're really supportive. But like, they have their fund, and they want an exit strategy because they want to be like, look what we did, look at this, look at what we grew it to, and look at what we sold it for. So a couple of them want to stay on, the good ones, the ones that are really active. But like, it is like I now know, like I'm educated to know. Like the first time around, I got lucky. I got really lucky with the guys. I took that money. I went to a branding company. Again, it was like something I didn't think I needed. I was like, branding? We're going to pay someone to make our boxes again and tell the story that I know? And it's like, yes. I was like, this is dumb.
And it was your investors that pushed you to do that?
Yeah. And it was one of my investors that owned a branding agency, and he gave us a deal, and he did a great job because that landed us Nordstrom, like within like moments. And yeah, so I did everything.
He's saying it's money laundering, but.
And no, and I really feel like I did that right. And we like, you know, Sebastian and I own like most of the company. The only way we wouldn't own the company is if Sebastian voted against me, and then he'd be really in the doghouse. So it's all good. I understand if we probably raise capital again, I probably won't have a majority, but I also might have some money in the bank, and I have 2 kids, and I live in a really expensive city, and I have a mortgage that I'm like really insane. You know, it feels insane. Like I can do it. I get a paycheck. Everything is great. We get bonuses. We're profitable. I've been profitable every year that I've been in business because I probably would die if I wasn't. You know, I probably would be like, oh my God, we are losers. You know. So like, but I also am like I'm so tight. You know, like I think that like if I didn't make this is probably wrong. It's probably like, I'm profitable because I don't spend all my money. Because I don't spend all my money because I get worried about payroll, and I get worried about making sure I can pay all the vendors. So I don't take those risks because I don't have that cash flow. But if I had the cash flow, I would know. If I had that capital, like I now know what I would need to do to be like, I can make 3 times. I know what I need. Like I know we need stores. I know that we just need more marketing. I just need to be able to spend on ads and not yell at my marketing people every week and be like, I thought we talked about a 3.2 ROAS. Didn't we talk about that for every dollar? And they're like, that's only in Q4. I'm like, no, we need it every quarter. And they're like, that's not possible. I'm like, what about Flip? What about that app? What about, you know, and I'm like, what about YouTube? What about, you know, so I am like, I feel like I'm in the hustle because like, if I want to do a certain number in revenue to be really looking like good to these big companies and looking desirable, I can't do it the way it is. Like, and I'm ready to take that risk. And I feel like I know what I need now, and I know how to do it. Whereas the first time around, I was like, this is cool. Look at the bank account. You know, let's not spend any of it. It looks so good. You know.
On a personal note, I love that you talk about cash flow because entrepreneurs always it's like profitable a lot.
Yeah.
None of it matters if you don't have cash flow. Like you have to actually, you just can't build stuff all day long. You have to sell stuff too.
Yeah.
Cash flow is everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But all the working capital stuff definitely resonates, you know, with me. It's got to be the number one concern and request that we get from folks that are kind of in that funding gap. To the extent that, I mean, literally, my partner and I wired one of the portfolio companies, you know, a relatively small amount of money to meet a payroll gap, you know, ahead of some, you know, financing literally at the end of, you know, at the end of last month. You know, this is, it's so routine that we literally, we stood up a business many years ago just to provide working capital financing to these kind of, small and medium-sized enterprises. And that's actually been one of our best fund investments. It's like probably the thing that investors want to invest. You would think they'd want to, be involved as much venture capital as possible, but lending to small businesses is actually that, that popular, that lucrative, because it is such a huge issue.
Yeah.
What sticks out to you? You get a lot of pitches, a lot of companies looking for capital, growth capital, and all that stuff. You choose the ones that you think you should go with, or the best bet, let's say. What do all of those have in common when the company's requesting capital?
Companies tend to raise money when they think they should raise money, and very often someone else is telling them to do it, except in the very beginning. And a lot of, especially venture-backed companies, raise money on a schedule. It's kind of based on like getting to a milestone and then a step up in valuation, and then there's kind of a formula to all of it. And the more institutionally backed they are, the better their VCs are, the more padded that is, but they basically raise money on this kind of stair step, and it can be a bit of a conveyor belt. We ran this math many years ago, and your typical venture-backed, founding team would wind up with something, between 4 and 8% of the company at the point that they sold it, which was not something. It's kind of almost the rationale for our business is to kind of minimize that dilution a little bit more, because we are fundamentally founder-friendly.
Scary to give up your baby like that.
I mean, in the medtech space, I don't want to scare you, but in biotech, it's more like 1 to 2%.
I know.
But
I'm pushing for that $1 billion valuation.
But that's the other challenge. You overvalue the company, you'll never raise money again, or if you do, all your employees will leave because now their options are worth nothing. And so, like, it's the step-ups have a rationale, right? And the system works for those that stay in that ecosystem, and backing companies within that ecosystem is great business for us. When we make idiosyncratic bets away from the kind of tier 1 venture-backed ecosystem, it's very often a founder that we've known for a long time, that has a tremendous amount of domain expertise. Typically, it's a second or third time founder, because failure is galvanizing. Failure, like, really, you fail a couple of times, you have learned what it is. That's pattern matching for most of us entrepreneurs. Like, you figure out how to do it at a certain point. So that second and third time entrepreneur, especially if they came out of a relatively elite system, whether venture or incubation or whatever it was, they tend to be pretty effective. That's a pretty good common thread. For us, we typically look at who their initial investors were. So, we're typically not investing at the seed stage. We see people after that. And so whoever led their initial round typically will be a very strong signal for us. A lot of it is social network driven. So if you are thinking about raising money, obviously get out there and network. I mean, things like this are, incredibly impactful. And obviously all the major incubators, Y Combinator, et cetera, are like wonderful feeder systems and drive a lot of signal for, for investors to follow on. But really, I mean, that's really the common thread is like, what is the kind of, what is the caliber of the entrepreneur? A lot of that's mediated by the ecosystem that, is super efficient at financing entrepreneurs, right? And so it's actually a lot easier to raise capital than a lot of people think. But to the, to everyone's point here, it does very often, result in you having to, think about giving up equity, giving up control, because obviously, any VC is going to take a board seat and have, participation. Any private equity fund's going to want, even if it's a minority, a participating, preferred interest in your business to, be able to, direct you a little bit. And so companies with that type of backing tend to be, the norm. And so the outliers actually are the businesses that have, that are essentially independent and manage to get to scale without having raised capital.
I'm going to simplify. I have like a simple version, not a simple version of it, but Douglas has a great business. He's proven it. It's in 1,000 hospitals, been in 1,000 surgeries, 53%.
Yeah,
efficiency.
53 increased efficiency in surgical process. Yeah.
He comes to you for capital for the next round. He needs $10 million to achieve what he wants to achieve. He asks for $90 million because he has big vision. Is that appealing? Is it personality driven, or is that you just think that his, and I don't mean to put it on him, but his vision is lacking? Like,
So
how big of an idea do you like as an investor?
So I think it really, again, it's so signal driven for the majority of investors. Size rarely is what matters. It's, what do they own of the business at a specific scale. Again, if it's venture-backed investors, it's almost like a formula. Valuation, percentage of ownership of the company, at given rounds. And so in, for example, healthcare, it's extraordinarily regimented and very VC friendly. It's almost like we call it the biotech mafia, that make those investments. But they are, very good at maintaining both ownership and control of their businesses. And so if you want to play in that ecosystem and you want to raise, for example, $90 million, there have been a couple of companies that have done it. For example, like in your exact space, Magic Leap, right? And been able to step away. Yeah, agreed.
Dark.
but but that is the, there are ways to break away from that and raise a tremendous amount of money, but very often it requires you to bust the category. Right now you see a lot of guys stapling, for example, AI to things to try and bust out of whatever category they were in. A few years ago, a lot of that, for example, you had a lot of regular way finance businesses saying they were technology businesses. If you can find a way to kind of, fit into, something that expands your multiple and you genuinely do have an advantage, then you could probably raise more money. But unless the folks that you're going to both share that vision and also you can convince them that for whatever reason that extra money is really going to get you to that, to bust that category wide open, it's going to be the exception, not the rule.
Yeah, a lot of it, like what we faced on from our perspective is, I'm saying, I'm preaching to the choir here, but like what we learned is I have an incredible law firm, overpriced. Why do 5 of them have to be on the call?
Always tell them to get off the call.
Why are 5 of them on the call for one question? Billable hours. We have a great law firm, and we ended up assembling a great team of accountants and money people that created the formula, created our TAM, or essentially in simple terms, what our market potential is, our burn rate, our 409A evaluation we just finished for this last year, and all that stuff. And ultimately, like you said, it's a formula based on our burn, based on our, where we're going in the market. I think the biggest slider is how much we give up. And by the way, side note, I had a huge, not blowout, and I don't mind saying this publicly, because I'm sure a lot of you would understand this, huge argument with some of my partners because some thought we could just do it on our own. One of my partners happens to be very, very wealthy, but we all put in equal amounts. But he's like, no, we're just going to throw our own money in. It's fine. And we had to explain about scaling and what it's going to take. And so, because he didn't want to give up anything. Yeah. He's like, he wanted to be an outlier. We can do this. We can sell it, with our customer base. We could have maybe done okay, but it would have been dangerous. But the truth is, getting VC funding also increases our valuation. Yeah, sure, we lose percentage, but then sure, we're worth $20, $40 million in the first round, more. Yeah. So, and then more so.
I actually had questions about business partners. I have a lot of questions, but I'm not going to ask them because I know everybody else has questions too, and I want to let other people ask. But I will leave with one, and if I have time, I'm going to ask the partner question. But we all only have 24 hours in a day. The 3 and 4 of you are running your businesses. How do you manage sanity for success? I think like 12 years ago, we were like, we work in a factory, and we do it 24 hours a day, but we kind of know, I think everybody's matured enough to know that it's not really helpful. Do you guys have little rituals?
I mean, I don't know about rituals, but there's a great book called, always read. There's a great book called The Innovators. And it's a great case study on how the companies that succeeded were ones that were sure in like a perfect storm of time, right, with computing or whatever, or health movements, but also were partners. There was a lot of inventions that never happened, that stayed in the basement of a university because there was never somebody to partner with them to get it out of there. So yes, partners keep us. I have to manage 2 large companies, large-ish for me, which is stressful. I could not do it without a great partner, and then afterwards. Yeah, find good talent and find your own hobbies. I like tinkering on my motorcycles. I like spending time with my family. That's it.
Motorcycles is therapy.
Yeah. Oh my
you
God.
never see a motorcycle in a therapist's office.
Yeah,
So
that's my baby, my BMW downstairs, that little silver one. I love motorcycles.
Do you log 300 miles a week? Is that how you do it?
In the summer, we ride. Exercise is super important. I found for me, because it was such a part of throughout college and after college, like we were training 25 hours a week. plus school, plus all this other stuff. So I'd get in my head and I'd get all like anxious and angsty and angry, and I'd be like, I need to go exercise. I need to do something. So I actually do really well when it comes to having a fairly basic routine of certain things I do every day. So I can't do the same thing every day in terms of like work, obviously. Like I couldn't be ass in chair at a desk doing the same task 5 days a week. I'm not built for that. But there are certain things I need to do every day on a fairly ritualistic, routine basis. One of which is exercise. It completely clears my head.
Same.
I mean, when we were at the trial for this lawsuit, it was in Miami because we're Florida corporation. So this trial was in Miami, and you're in the pressure cooker. You know, I was the corporate rep, so I sat in the front. I was the third chair. We had our first chair lawyer, our local counsel, and me, and then we had 4 other lawyers and the guy that does the TV, and we're paying all these guys, and the clock is just running. This was a 2-week-long trial. I was staying at the $87 a night Yotel in Miami with it was, yeah.
Lawyers at Four Seasons.
The lawyers are at the JW Marriott, having all the steak dinners, and we're eating 2 slices of pizza a day. And I realized I was going to lose it if I didn't get into a routine. So I woke up every morning, I went to the hotel gym, I did about 90 minutes of exercise, and this was Miami in February, and it was still hot. Everyone's like, oh, we go to Florida in January and February, it's still hot. I'd still walk out, I'd take a cold shower, I'd be sweating on the walk to the courthouse. But at least my head was clear. And then you sit in the courtroom from 9:30 until 6:30 every day. You'd sit there, and it was the only thing I could do to not go crazy. Because you're stuck, and you're on, they're watching you. The jury's watching you, the judge is watching you, you gotta be on best behavior, which for me is difficult. That's the biggest part of my routine, I'd say, is exercise.
Chrissy, your business is kind of weirdly, not weirdly, but it's sort of based on relaxation. I imagine it's maybe really hard for you.
I light a candle. I'm a mom. I have 2 kids under the age of 10. I work with my husband. I just sometimes I just laugh,
Laughter.
I don't have a motorcycle, and I do have a bike, but my kids are young. But I do Peloton every day, and I live in Red Hook. My factory is 7 blocks away. It takes me 8 minutes to walk home, to work. So it's I just have a very simple life over in Red Hook, and it's just I keep it really. I don't go out a lot. I enjoy my kids. I enjoy my husband, for the most part, right? And it's I have a country house that I try to go up there, and it feels good to be there. I try really not, I am stressed. I'd be lying to be everything is really great. I stress about work, but it's good stress, because I love what I do. I'm so excited. I just came from a trade show. I just got off a plane. I'm so exciid for summer stuff, what we're doing. And I feel maybe I'm powering down, because I feel I've been going nonstop. But I'm just really happy, and I really try not to feel I just try to keep myself happy, and I know when the people around me are toxic, and I'm all right, we gotta push away here,
Yeah.
I work out a little bit, I feel good, and I really just I love my kids. And
Toxic people thing's an important one.
They really can even toxic employees could really they ruin the day, you know. And they can really just make you question what you're doing. So I really just try to be open and honest with the people that we work with. We're not very professional, but we are. But we're a family. I have employees that I have production people. They make candles. They stand all day, and it's I hear them on the phone speaking Spanish, and I know that they're having a hard time paying rent this month. So I'll tell Sebastian, my husband's from Argentina. I'll be go find out what's going on, and if you can help her, just go figure it out, because she's so upset, and she's been with us for 7 years, and if she's having a rough month, what does she need? And we do this a lot, and it actually makes us feel really good, and I feel good when I know I'm helping them out, and a lot of the people that have worked for us have been with us for years, so I just feel I'm really happy, and I just try to do good stuff, and I'm always looking for an activity with my kids to like break up, what rock can we climb, or you want to take a ferry, and I enjoy it. I enjoy that time.
It's a panel of people doing very complicated things but living simply.
Yeah, and light a candle. It really will help.
Light a candle. I'd like to, answer. Bob, do we have a microphone, like a roving microphone on the floor? All right, we'll do it. All right, let's open it to questions. I'm gonna.
Or you want to take mine?
No, Chris, you got to answer.
Anyone that does
Wait, I can share.
Yeah.
Thank you, panelists, for your time and your thoughts, first and foremost. This has been illuminating. Thank you to the Car Club for sponsoring these types of events. I don't know about everybody else, but being in a room with like-minded individuals is the reason why I joined the Car Club, so thank you for this, Mike. No, really appreciate it. My question comes from more of a marketing standpoint. It was really nice to hear you guys talk about raising capital and all that, but how do you resonate in the market? How do you last? How do you have longevity and convince folks that you have the best candles, the best wheels, the best augmented reality platform, the best firm to connect Silicon Valley and finance? How have you managed to have longevity for all these years? Oh, sorry. My name is Brian. Member since 2018, and it's an honor to meet everybody.
Hi, Brian.
Cheers.
I can start. Yeah, I can
Go
start.
for it.
This is something I think about frequently, is how do we maintain our sort of status in the market that we've worked so hard to achieve, and then possibly even elevate that status.
You're, by the way, you're in an industry where people say, I need a new set of wheels, and they go online, and there's every comparison. Like, people have made a decision
Yes.
before they talk to you. That's difficult.
And if you asked anyone like looking into starting a business like ours, they'd be like, don't do it. It's super saturated. Like, you're gonna die. It's not worth it. Like, so it was like dumb. We were blind. We went into it. But I can go back to something I said earlier. What's good for this business, especially, is there's a competitive aspect to it. We can create something that quantifiably is better. So we always had this saying, that which is measured improves. So if you can measure a metric, then that's going to be your baseline to improve that metric. So the thing about our wheels is we pride ourselves in their aerodynamic efficiency, how fast they cut through the air, their weight. We can measure the weight. We can measure the stiffness. There's all these things. And then you give them to an athlete, and they win a world championship. They win an Olympic medal. They set a world record. And then quantifiably, you've earned this spot. Yeah. But maintaining that spot is difficult. It keeps me up every night. And the number one thing I do is I look at every other competitor and what they've done and how they've screwed up. I watch everybody, every single company. And it doesn't have to be necessarily in our market. I love watching our competitors to see what they're doing and how they've screwed up. But you can look at any number of brands and see the missteps that they've taken, what has killed a once great brand. Easy one, low-hanging fruit, Boeing. 1960s and 70s, they were beautiful, amazing, engineering-centric. They made the most innovative stuff. 747 was the first jumbo jet. It was the coolest plane in the world. And now people don't want to fly a 737-9. They don't want the side of the plane to blow out. And it's stupid little cheap stuff they could have fixed. Tighten the bolts. Make sure the door plug is tight. Like little stuff, right? So you have to watch everything and you have to learn. So like Boeing, we don't want to be like Boeing. We don't want to be a once great that's now just, driven by bean counters. But like we want to stay at the top.
Yeah.
And you have to invest in the things that keep you at the top. Like look at your core competencies, look at what moves the needle. So like for us, it's having the top athletes, the top product. I personally take a sort of like cost no object standpoint. I want to make the best thing. I don't care what it costs. I always say, I don't care. I want the best. I want the best carbon fiber.
That's how your hubs happen, I'd imagine.
I want the best hub. I want the best. Because you can always start high and you can always trickle down. It's easier to be a Mercedes and go from an S-Class down to A than to be, a Datsun or a whatever.
I'm happy to hear
Kia
your comments
and
about...
It's hard to go up. Yeah. It's easier to trickle down.
I'm happy to hear your comments about competition. It was one of the things I did want to ask. In a weird way, I would say that the Classic Car Club's competition is potential swimming pools and third children. That's why. And I got... Third children are all different. Like I can't compete with that. So I always try to just look at what other businesses are doing, and like, I'll go down a wormhole of like, industry ABC and just like learn what everybody's doing and see who failed. I kind of almost want to have someone to compete against, maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
Keeps you honest.
Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword though, because
Also,
well, no, it's a double-edged sword because if you hang everything on your competition, then you just start sort of copying each other.
become reactive. Yeah, you
And
don't
it
want to
just
be
becomes-
reactive. Yeah.
So it's a double-edged sword. You have to look at it almost as an outsider and just take it as, I'm here to learn a lesson. I don't care what they're doing, but I want to see the good, the bad. Like, where did they make a good decision?
It's a balance you have to get right. Otherwise,
Definitely.
it'll
because you need to
confine your
maintain
thinking.
your identity. So,
Thank you. Any other questions?
Hi, I'm Zoe. My mom is a member here, also an entrepreneur, owns a small business. So, thank you. So I'm sure when you guys all started out, you heard the word no quite a bit. And I wanted to know, when you heard that, like, how did you combat that? How did you handle hearing that word and then move forward to be the successes that you guys are today?
Hi, Zoe. You hear no, and I think what you have to take from that no is it's more like someone's giving you like constructive criticism. So I kind of like a no when I'm like, guys, I really think that we should do a scentless candle. Like, we do have a couple people that have asked for a no fragrance candle, and our product manager will say, no, we're luxury elevated fragrance. Like, there is a no fragrance, no. And I think that, like, I'll be like, oh, maybe you're right, and I sit with it, and then maybe I'll go back a month later and be like, no, I'm really passionate. We need to have a no fragrance candle. I mean, we don't, but I'm just can't think of an idea. But I think that, like, a no sometimes you have to think of as like constructive criticism, because like I've had no's where I'm like, don't you think our original packaging had a little dachshund on it because I didn't have kids and I had a dog and that was like my baby? And whenever I went someplace, people would tell me like, is this dog soap? And I was like, no, it's for you. It's for your body. And they're like, but why is there a dog on it? I'm like, I have a dog. And I'm like, what's so wrong about this? And in one way, that is a no. Like that is someone telling me no. But that no, I did get rid of the dachshund, and now we really are an elevated. She just passed away like 2 weeks ago. Yeah, she was like 17. And
Sorry.
But like, I think that no, sometimes like, I haven't had a no where like someone said, no, you can't do this, or no, it's not going to work. I mean, maybe my mom, like, if a no is like, are you ever going to get a real job? If that's like a no, then like, yeah, no, I'm not,
My mom
But-
still asks me that. I'm like, I go to
know.
work every day. What are you talking about?
Like, when are you going to get a real job? I'm like, Mom.
She thinks
I'm
I
like,
hang out on a couch all day,
I-
which I know you're all members. I do that.
but that's work.
I have a laptop in front of me, and I'm doing things on
Yeah.
it sometimes.
But honestly, my mom really thought I made it when it's so pathetic. No, but it's not. It's like we got an inquiry from Macy's because that was like her store. Like, she didn't care about Nordstrom. Like, I mean, and Macy's is just like .com, and it's just to be they're present with our competitors because they're doing it. But like, that is when we made it, was like the Macy's. I was like, Mom, not Nordstrom, not Bloomingdale's.
Daughters and Macy's.
Macy's, Pico Mall, Sunrise, but I think like I think of it as constructive criticism of like, if someone's saying no to me because of like something I'm trying to create, I have to listen, because like everyone who thought that was dog soap is right. That was really dumb, and I needed to remove it.
However, I think there's like, Americans spend $6 billion a year on their pets. Luxury dog soap is.
I know.
Get that
maybe.
logo back, maybe.
Yeah.
I have a brand new puppy. I would buy it.
I know. Maybe.
can I add a little color? An internal, at least personally, an internal no to me is like a lot easier to swallow than an external no.
Oh yeah.
So
What's an internal no? What do you mean?
like someone in your team
own
says that's a
mind,
bad
or your
idea. Like, we're not
coworker?
doing this product. Like, internal to your company, internal to your inner group. That's easy to swallow. Like, I want to do this. I ask Richard, he knows the market. Will a cyclist like this? He goes, probably not. I'm like, all right, easy pill to swallow. External no's are really painful. And
I'm the opposite.
I've had a lot of external no's over the years. I will say no can be a gift. I mean, it can really
Sure.
be a gift.
Like dodge a
but
bullet.
if you believe in a product, like if you want to do something, if you're passionate over dog soap, dachshund specific soap, and you go out and pitch it to investors and you get 99 no's, it's really demoralizing.
But the one yes, I mean,
And
I've
then
had a lot
maybe
of
you'll
those.
get a yes. But like the solution, what I've found, and I'm a little bit different, but the solution to me is to dig in.
Yep.
Like if I really believe in something, no one's gonna believe in my idea more than me. If I'm pitching something, I need to believe in it the absolute most. Because if I'm asking you for $1 million and I'm not all in,
No.
jumping with both feet, and they can smell it, you get the like, nope, you're not in it. So
Yeah.
you have to believe, you have to have the confidence. You got to have, it sounds crude, but you have to have huge balls. Like huge, you have to have a huge pair to go out and be like, I'm doing this no matter what. Maybe we course correct, maybe we need to pivot a little. You can't be blind, but you have to be confident.
Sorry.
No, but what Chrissy said makes all the sense in the world. You're getting feedback, right?
Yeah.
You can't think of it as anything but that. And being able to correct at that point, whether it's a true course correction or just modifying things a little bit, I mean, that's it. But you can never quit, at least, not if you're going to win.
A quick thing I'll know. I asked you guys earlier, how do you stay sane or whatever? I didn't really have an answer for myself, but in the last couple of years, Zoe, this is one for you. I have my own sanity because I just love saying no to things now. And I'm like a real people pleaser, and I'm in customer service, client service, and all that. So by nature, I'm always like, yep, I'll do it. And now I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. No. Man, learn how to say no if you're starting a business or you're running one. Like, it helps you just focus on doing what you need to do and not doing a bunch of shit for other people, to be honest, is how to say. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dasha. I've been a member since 2018. Dasha. Member since 2018. I have a question about, you guys mentioned that sometimes your employees just don't or lack the heart when it came to, like, I guess, paying your employees or whether or not, like, how do you manage that kind of walking that line between going broke, paying your employees, and then not paying them enough and losing good people? So just a question. So have you, I guess, what's the relationship between like offering your employees, for example, like equity in the company? Because arguably, like, it's a little bit foolhardy for an employee who's, a lower rung, I guess, worker, like for them to be really full of heart and gung-ho and, because the mileage can only go so far. So, yeah.
I tell every single employee that I don't choose their pay. They choose their pay. And however valuable they are to the corporation, that's what they will get paid. And I tell people that they need to become so indispensable to the organization. It's like we had this term in sport, we wanted to be undeniable. Because when you're in a boat with 8 guys, if you're the lowest rung on the boat, like you're the guy that gets kicked out and they bring in another guy who's stronger, faster, better, whatever. So we always wanted to be undeniable. We wanted to be so good that no one could tell you, no, you're out. And I tell that to every person we hire. I say, I don't set your pay. You set your pay. And if you're so indispensable to the organization, I will pay you whatever you want because I will need you, I will want you, like you will be so good. And we have never had to like fire a single employee. Everybody wants to work because they know that they set the ceiling. I don't set anyone's ceiling.
That's awesome. I like that.
That's cool. What about the, Hans, maybe one for you, the sharing equity with employees?
I think for operating companies, especially for venture-backed companies, if you've got employees that are not bought into the long-term vision, it gets really complicated. So equity participation is extraordinarily important. It's shifted over the years. It went from something that was kind of very simple and there were no clawbacks and, people kind of had equity for life. You'd hire a CTO, he'd leave, it would mortgage and hamstring the company. I think people have gotten smarter about it. So, the number one piece of advice you can get here is, there's labor stuff. Make sure you talk to your lawyers about that stuff. But, make sure that in the event that someone does leave, that stock's available to retain and attract a replacement, right? You can't. It's not just a simple vesting schedule anymore. A lot of kind of tricks of the trade, but that's probably the state of the art, is to make sure that stock can get clawed back in the event of an early departure or failure.
Yeah, I would. We've given, like you said, equity to like some of our first employees that were sort of like there late nights making it happen, and within reason with consulting our lawyers and that sort of thing. But they feel involvement, and I think the only time there's an early question, because we are a bootstrap company early on, where you're like, well, we can't afford to pay this person 6 figures, but maybe we just give them some equity and hope for the best. That is never, like, the early discussions. We've learned, our company's been around 6 years, but in the early days, you never want to have that question. It's not, you're bound for failure. Now, we had a contractor that we've now, a team that we've bought into our company, but early on we gave them equity for a discount on services that made it viable for us to afford for them to do what they needed to do, and they were happy. They were more bought into the success of the product, even as an outside company, now internal company. But yeah, giving equity, if you don't have the capital, is just, unfortunately, you're shooting yourself in the foot. It's like you said, if they give them equity for motivation, give equity for a discount possibly for something invaluable to your company. But other than that, I would not just give away equity. Equity, hold on to it. It's a much longer discussion for sure, though. Yeah, it's like gold. Every point I give up, it could be. I hope our company's worth billions of dollars. I hope one day, and that could be a lot.
Or you don't have it for the next fundraise.
Yeah, or for the next fundraise. Yeah, you lose your. Yeah. Yeah. So we're very careful with our equity. Yeah. What's up?
Follow-up, statement. So you're saying hold on to equity, but if you're asking your employees to be, balls deep, so that's kind of sacrificing their personal life and their personal time.
I would never
arguably.
use that terminology per se.
Well,
no, but they get paid for sure. But those that I know, there were a couple early on that we definitely could pay more. We were early on in the early days that they deserve more, right? They earn their worth, and so to give them their value, we were like, here's some equity, you earned it, and we've since been able to pay them more. But to maintain motivation, when we were fundraising and started selling product and that sort of thing, we definitely did that. It's a nuanced conversation for sure. It's money in itself to the value of your company, so hope that helps.
Hi, I'm James. I've been part of CCC since 2021. Hans, this might be one a little bit more for you, but in your mind, is 2021 the best year ever to raise investment or the worst?
Mike, do you mind if I ask my partner, David Weisberg, to answer this question? I see him in the crowd, and I want to put him on the spot.
Hans is testing me. That's a great question, actually. So it depends on a couple of factors. So obviously, 2021 had one of probably the most frothiest markets since 2001, the most frothiest market since 2001. So it really depends on the stage of the company and if you could grow into your valuation. We have companies that have raised, this is one of the first times in history, companies have raised $250 million and completely go to zero. We just saw another one last week that had raised, I think, $450 million. So the problem with raising a lot of money, people say, what's the problem with raising a lot of money? There's a couple issues. One is that your investors, such as us at 10X, pressure you to spend that money. And the reason for that is we have to return our capital to our investors, which are our limited partners. So we have our own time, and we have two drivers to our performance. One is return, and the other is time. So you have to start deploying, you have to start building your customer base, building revenue. The second aspect is that you start to hire a bunch of employees, and one of the most difficult thing in business, I used to be a serial entrepreneur, is firing people. Human beings ultimately are averse to hiring and getting rid of people, which is why you come up with the key to whether you should keep an employee is whether you would hire them again. That's the key test. And most people do not pass that test, or a lot of people do not pass that test. So if you build up entire infrastructure, entire departments, some companies have entire departments that they no longer need. And you saw this with some of the cuts recently with Facebook and Google. They've cut 25, 50% of their workforce. The most famous one is with X, with Elon. I think he cut down, somebody could correct me, but I think more than 80% of the workforce, and essentially nothing broke, which is an interesting question. Like, what were those 80% of people doing? He used a very kind of brute test of how many lines of code are you coding, and people would go on X and complain and say, I'm getting let go, and Elon said, show me how much code you've deployed, and that was his rhetorical device.
What was that thing that he said? He said he was all about cutting, right? And so he was something like, I'll take 80% away from something, and if I'm not, of course it's going to fail, because you're not supposed to take 80% away, but he knew he cut the right amount if he had to return back something like 10 or 15%, whatever it was.
Yeah, so he created a new paradigm, which is basically, that you've fired too many people when you have to rehire them, and that's part of the process.
Yeah.
So it's
Scary.
interesting. Elon's creating new paradigms every day, and he's the CEO of CEOs, so it's wise to see what he's doing. But in general, you create a lot of infrastructure, a lot of things that are impossible to change. It's the famous innovator's dilemma, if you guys have known that concept. It's companies get too big in order to innovate. Famously with Kodak, Blockbuster, Netflix, Kodak and the digital camera. IBM had a comeback later, but IBM was superseded. So it's a very predictable thing that happens in Silicon Valley. So you want to raise money at the right valuation. Hans also alluded to it earlier, which is 409A valuations, which is how you pay employees. If you raise money at a $300 million valuation and everybody in the company knows that you're worth $100 million, it's as if you've wiped out all the equity from your employees. Sometimes it's even worse. So some people have bought the equity at $300 million. So sometimes smart CEOs end up doing things like proactively recapitalizing the company and making sure that everybody's motivated. So it could be, I'd say overall, it was a very bad time to raise money. But for some people that have been around for 20 years and that knew that it was a very bad time to raise money, it was a very good time to raise money.
The one thing I'll add is that even the worst years, the worst vintages, and look, I mean, the jury's out on 21 for a long time. It takes 10 years for a lot of those investments to crystallize. But, a lot of these bad vintages, dot-com boom, tail end, and, that kind of stuff, they still, if they were top quartile, top decile venture capital investors, the data tells us that they still didn't necessarily lose money. And so, I think where you have seen top decile investors invest, there still is you're going to see large liquidations, large losses, but that doesn't mean that some of those companies still aren't going to go out there and 100x, 1000x, and that's what returns those funds. So I think that's the way to view it if you're thinking about venture.
Hi, my name's Ben. I am a barber. So one of the things I recently encountered was I had a client want a house call, and it was late at night when he hit me up. He's like, can you come at 9 a.m. the next morning? And I was like, sure, day off, fantastic. I took the time, I spent the money to go take a lift there, $120 round trip. And then he eventually ended up just not showing up, and I was sitting in his lobby doing nothing. So one of the things I learned from it was I need to take a deposit to do these services. Was there a moment in any of your guys' business where you approached a failure or some kind of no that made you think and twist how you approach your business?
Can I ask a question, Ben?
Yeah.
How much do you charge for a haircut?
So I do it kind of unique. So I do $45 for a one-time service, but I also do a membership as well. So it's a $100 buy-in, and then it's $60 gets you 2 services, and then $100 gets you 4 services. So
Amazing.
It's if you want to take care of yourself at an affordable rate, that's kind of the goal,
It's great.
Yeah. So coming from the world of video production and advertising, I've been, part of my French, everybody, I've been royally fucked. In the world of production, everything that bad, thankfully in the tech company, it's been sort of just hard work and no like crazy chaos, which is odd to say. Just hard work, you know. Hopefully good idea, bad ideas, we still push forward. The production company, holy crap. I could tell you stories of crazy stuff that happens. And ultimately stuff like that happens and it sucks. So we had to get we've had people, we did a whole big shoot with 50 Cent. This is a great story, and I'll keep it short. Is a headphone company they partnered with, and they wanted to promote this new headphone company. So they wanted us to hire 100 extras, and then we got a motorized dolly. There's only 2 in the country. They're like $1 million each, and we shot for 2 days straight, 100 extras, all doing the same motion. And then you remember that Michael Jackson video, black or white, where all the faces morph? So they all morphed. We did motion tracking, and it was back like 15 years ago, and that was like a big deal. And we're very proud of it. We did this big ad campaign, and we delivered it to the creatives at this company, and they loved it. They're like, amazing. They showed it to the owner, and he said, "What is this shit?" And they never asked him any permission, and he was like, "I'm not going to pay you." And he's like, "I wanted to see people skateboarding. I want to see people." He wanted a lifestyle video, which my partner and I just shot with a handheld camera and some friends over the weekend. And literally, then they're like, "Oh, cool, this is great." But ultimately, we learned from that is, like getting our contracts and agreements on paper. There's Stripe offers opportunities for you to collect credit cards to pre-reserve. So automatically they're charged. Just look up some legalese to cover your butt. So if you're going to show up, that there's going to be a cancellation fee. My barber has a cancellation fee, you know, if I and he knows me. So, but yeah, learn from that, man. You got burned, but don't let it happen again. That's the biggest thing I would say. We got burned a couple times like that, where we had to fight for to get paid, even though it was owed to us and we couldn't afford lawyers. But ultimately, learn how to never make it happen again. Just grow from it.
Good advice. Can I add to that too? I've learned when you have to recoup capital, like in your situation. I learned from a friend. One friend of mine had an English bloke record a shakedown for him, and it wasn't a real shakedown, but like, and he's a creative brand guy. So when Unilever doesn't pay him, they get a phone call that's like, "Hey, this is whatever," and it sounds like he's getting shakedown. And you know what? He always gets the money for it. One thing that I do is when people cross a line and things need to be paid for, some of you might have received my letters, some of you haven't, but I try to write really funny letters that reference what was done, and it eliminates the conversation with like, "No, my friend didn't take that bottle of champagne." I sort of humiliate people to the point of making everybody laugh, and a lot of those letters I've been told, man, like, that was the best email, and I send it in the mail too, because people like to touch things. And they always say, like, "That made me laugh so hard, it made me feel so stupid," and I always get the money back. So it's a shitty position to be in, but just like try to laugh about it and try to have a way that is uniquely personal to you to shame that person or make them recognize that they had crossed the line that they shouldn't have. And you do it in this elevated and graceful way, and it usually will come back to you. So a little bit of advice.
Hey guys, I'm Kieran. Good to meet you all. Thanks for coming and thanks for hosting. This is a bit of a niche question. It's about the biotech mafia, but I'll make it a little bit more general. When you're investing or in an industry that is very formulaic, down from how you make the products, who invests in you, what the step-ups are, how you exit, how do you get around that as an investor or a company? Because biotech mafia loves to say, "Oh, valuations are down" or whatever, but they're all kind of deciding it, and they can't just get the 15-20% bump on the IPO anymore, because that's not really happening for pre-revenue biotechs. But just wonder, how do you guys think about getting around that? Or I guess even more broadly, like if you were going to an investor group that doesn't typically invest in your space, like how would you convince them to buy in even at a small amount?
Well, I guess the easiest way to answer that is that you can't necessarily break out of it if you want money from those guys, but there are other investors. We have a portfolio company, that actually we hosted an event for here, that's got a gene therapy that's, curing HIV. It's, it's in the clinic. It's extraordinary. But the founder is a former Apple executive, and he decided he didn't want biotech mafia money, and he, put in the first several $1 million himself, and he managed to raise $80 million outside of that ecosystem to fund his, clinical trials and all that sort of stuff. But it meant doing, what would you say, David? Thousands of meetings, And I think it is a challenge, right, to do so. And so raising chunky money from institutional investors gets very challenging there. But that doesn't necessarily mean, especially in the healthcare space, that if you are able to bootstrap yourself to a certain place, that, for example, a biopharma major or some other strategic investor might not be interested in some sort of business development deal, which is where where a lot of that stuff gets done, where you might get $100 million to develop the thing and go through trials, but you'll still wind up giving away a lot of the business at that point. I think just the reality is they're either blockbusters or they aren't. It's somewhat binary. We have a friend who is a partner at Flagship Pioneering, who was the first check into Moderna, and regardless of how much subsequent dilution he took, it was still a lot of money, right? And so there is a binary quality to returns and to outcomes that really you have to consider when you're thinking about, like, okay, I don't want to take this dilution from the biotech mafia. Well, what am I trading that for? Is that really worth it? I mean, David, you have anything to add there?
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, never break rules without first knowing them. So you have to know the entire rules of the game. You have to know them in and out. A lot of times people break rules and they don't actually know the rules, and that's problematic, especially for raising capital, because you have to be able to sell against the kind of dominant narrative. The second aspect is a lot of these, so if you look at the biotech mafia or just barriers to entry, they go both ways. So once you're past the barrier to entry, it's your advantage. So I would try to build a business as quickly as possible, exit, and now you're on the other side of the table and you're benefiting from that kind of supply demand. But if you choose to go against the grain, know what catalyst you're going towards that will go in your favor. So the market could stay irrational longer than you could stay liquid. There's a common thing. So know what your catalyst is for the market changing. And if there's no catalyst, then you have to decide whether you want to get into that business and go as fast as possible, or whether you want to play a different game. But you can't violate the rules of industries, without already having success.
Thank you. Time for 2 quick ones, and then we'll have cocktails. Noah has one. He's cheating.
I'm cheating, sorry. My name is Noah. Thank you all for coming. Thank you. You've been a spectacular panel. Thank you for Michael to putting this together. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I have the privilege of coming to work here at the Classic Car Club every day and helping operate with Michael and everyone else here. I had a mentor who made me believe that everyone who worked for us was there to serve us and to support us. And then I had a eureka moment a few years back where I realized I was really there to support them. When you get to a certain level, everyone below you, their success or failures are your successes or failures. And if someone on your team is failing, it's on you. Figure out how to help them, make them successful, move them into a role they can be successful in. I'm just so curious. For me, that changed everything about my management style. I'm so curious if you had those moments in your careers where all of a sudden things clicked and you realized that's not the way to do it. There's a better way.
I think David will say that I've probably come to that realization a couple of times, but it is a bit of a pendulum for me. So I do think that ultimately that is our job. Whether it's as investors, whether it's directly as managers, to really create an environment where everyone can not just be a force multiplier for the founder, which very often is the beginning stages of a venture, but that really can go out there and create a tremendous amount of value. And being able to foster that it's a very it's not a skill set that can be learned very easily if you develop the habit of kind of creating that cult of service. So it's very difficult to break that in an organization.
And I think a couple of things. I think it's the boss neither works for the employee nor the employee works for the boss. Everybody works for the company. And there's a lot of nuances to that, meaning that if the employee needs to work significantly harder to scale the boss, then the employee has to work significantly harder. if there's only something that only the boss could do, then the boss needs to work harder. It's not about the boss or the employee, it's about the organization. The other thing that I'll say to that is one thing that this goes back to kind of downsizing is that one bad apple could destroy the entire batch. And it is the CEO's number one goal and number one responsibility to get rid of poor performers so that it doesn't drag down the entire organization. I think because it is like a virus, both positive and hard work ethic and poor work ethic is a virus that spreads to organizations very quickly.
The question is really more to whether or not you had those moments in your life, in your careers, not whether or not you agree with my opinion on supporting your staff or them supporting you.
I realized early on that nobody wanted to pull for a guy that they hated, right? So like at Harvard, there was a legendary rowing coach. I always go back to rowing because there's a lot of lessons to be learned. But there was a legendary rowing coach. His name was Harry Parker. And he coached there for decades, and you can read all sorts of books. And everyone wanted to win for Harry. He was this legend, and he spoke, and people listened. And yes, you know, the boss doesn't lead the employees and tell them what to do the employees. So I get it, but there does need to be a culture of appreciation. Like, you can't be hated. If you hate your boss, you're not going to go the extra mile for them. You're bound to work harder for someone that you like, love, or admire. And that's why the guys at Harvard, they would go undefeated for seasons because they wanted to win for Harry. And I realized that you know, I hate that guy. I'm not going to bust my ass for that guy. And it's like, even when you're a little kid, you're like, oh, mom and dad, you're so mean. When I'm a girl, I'm not going to be like my mom and dad. I'm going to be cool. Like, I'm not going to like reprimand my kids. And I kind of think about that to this day where I'm like, my employees can't hate me. Because if my employees hate me, they're not going to want to work hard for the organization. And it kind of all goes back to this creating a sense of purpose, getting everyone to pull in the same direction, like having this commonality. And it's a much larger discussion to talk about corporate culture, like the why. It's the most important thing, I think, is creating the why for everyone to feel like they are in the right place and they want to work for you and you want to work for them. But I learned it early on because at the end of the day, if no one wants to work for you, you're sitting in a room by yourself. And like, if you don't have cash, it's another thing. Like, yeah, if you got a ton of cash and you're handing out checks, like, people will do whatever you want. You know, oh, I'm writing the check. You'll show up. But if you're cash rich, like, fine. But if you don't have cash, you're starting a company and you need to motivate people. Got to motivate people to want to be there. So you have to think of like, how do I become admired? How do I get people to admire me and want to show up at 6 a.m. and want to go the extra mile and want to do those things that create that sacrifice for the why?
Yeah. Hi, guys. It's Tim. I'm a member since 2003.
Just a little louder there.
Sorry, it's Tim. I'm a member since 2003. That's good. And I want to thank the entrepreneurs for sharing your stories and your passion. It's really come through in the discussion tonight. It's very inspiring, and thank you for sharing that. And to the guys at 10X, thank you for sharing your insights to the business and being an investor in companies like this. It's very insightful and interesting to learn about. I have a question for the 10X guys, which is if you could share maybe the top 2 or 3 reasons why you see companies fail, and what are those things? Is it management? Wasn't enough capital? Was it not enough? Was it the wrong product? Was competition? Was it? What are the? Because I'm sure with your enormous portfolio, you've seen trends and have some experience in this. Everybody likes to talk about the wins when you're in Vegas, but you learn from the losses. And if you could share that, I'd be appreciated.
Yeah. Good question. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's really two main reasons companies fail, especially early on. One was popularized by Paul Graham, who started an incubator called Y Combinator, which is make stuff people want. forget the exact term, but basically make products that people want. So if people don't want your product, you're going to fail. The second one is founder arguments. Founder split-ups are the number one reason that companies fail, because they do that before they actually make something that people want. So if you could start making something that people want, and then founders could split up and the company could still. So the clock is ticking until you make something that people want, and ultimately that starts from, in my experience, customer-centric design, which means you talk to your customers often. You think that would be an obvious point, but a lot of people develop products outside of customers, and some people kind of are afraid to ask customers key questions. And then the third, a bonus one I'll say, is make painkillers, not vitamins, which means make products that people need, not products that people want. If you could get somebody to need your product, you're in a very good situation. In fact, the gauge of that is if your product goes away, people are very pissed off. It's not actually how happy they are to have your product, it's how pissed off they are not to have your product. So those are kind of the 2.5.
That's good. I like that.
Thank you very much, everybody. So, Chrissy, Harrison, Douglas, Hans, thank you very much for being here. Really appreciate the insights. We're going to hang, if anybody wants to hang around, there's a bar downstairs with cocktails, so that's where you will find me. And thank you once again for a really great and informative night. I appreciate it.
And
thank you for coming as well, of course. Thank you.
And I think there's a link, add me on LinkedIn or whatever, or if you want to check out what we do, xxex.ai. Always happy to make new friends. I live across the street, and I'm always here. So.
Also, thanks to Bob in the back, videotape and everything. And if there's parts that you missed or you wanted to hear it again, it'll be on our Discord channel, I guess tomorrow. Bob will say.
Yeah,
anyway.
if you'd like to listen to more from me and Hans, you could check out our podcast, 10X Capital Podcast. We've had some very interesting people, including two of the hosts of the All In podcast, Balaji Srinivasan, one of the most famous people in the crypto universe, and also people like the Rothschild family and very influential limited partners.
All right, thank you very much, everybody. See you downstairs. Thank you. Also, yeah, I'm sorry. Chrissy brought a candle for everybody, which is fantastic. Grab it on the way out. Make your domestique more acceptable.